Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name's Donnie Glover, and I am a fan of State Senator Antonio Hayes. How are you today, Senator?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Donnie.
Good deal. You just finished the Maryland General Assembly. The 90-day session goes from mid-January to mid-April.
Yep. Oh, it was exciting. When we entered this year's session, it was COVID, COVID, and COVID. People in Maryland wanted to know what we were going to do as a legislator, as a lot of families were facing layoffs and possible evictions and stuff like that. And so we went to work early and trying to get some things done on behalf of Marylanders.
So let me just ask you, and we're putting in a promo for Mr. Jimmy Britton. You know, Mother's Day is coming up, and he's a big supporter of Be More News, just like you have been. And we want to make sure people know that he has those dinners available. But just tell me, for those who don't know, when the 90-day session occurs, do you have to stay in Annapolis?
You don't have to stay in Annapolis, but you spend an awful lot of time in Annapolis from early in the morning to sometimes late in the evening. And, the hard part is you don't necessarily know when the day will end because it really depends on how much testimony it has. And then sometimes the discussions could go on longer than what one would think. And so it really depends on how long the day is.
Do you stay in Annapolis?
Sometimes I stay in Annapolis, but most of the times I commute back and forth from Baltimore to Annapolis, especially if I'm getting out at a reasonable time. Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of our lives in Annapolis during a 90-day session that we're there.
So there are 2,500 bills that the legislature deals with every session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that work? Do you vote on all 2,500 bills?
No, so actually, I think it's higher than that. We could hear anywhere from 3,000 bills, but in the General Assembly, everyone is assigned to one standing committee. So in the House of Delegates, I believe they have 6 standing committees. In the Maryland Senate, we have 4 standing committees. I myself, I serve on the Senate Finance Committee. So Senate Finance deals with everything that pretty much touched the private sector, including utilities and energy issues, as well as a lot of healthcare issues. And we also deal with a lot of labor issues that affect the workforce. And so I serve on the Senate Finance Committee in Annapolis, but I also serve on a couple of other additional committees. One of the committees that I'm really proud of this year, I had an opportunity to serve on the Executive Nominations Committee, and that committee is responsible for the confirmation of any appointments that the governor make to agency heads as well as various boards and commissions.
Okay.
This year, we probably, and one of the great things about the General Assembly website, and I should probably pull it up because it will, the new website that we have is, really fascinating in that it gives you an opportunity to really have an idea to see how many bills each committee have the opportunity to hear. And probably, and I'm going to pull it up here real quick to give an idea, but it unfortunately, here it is. Here it is right here. So Senate Finance this year, Donnie, we probably heard, we had the least amount of bills outside out of all the other committees. You had Education, Health, and Environment had 433 bills. BNT had 417. JPR had 311, and Senate Finance came in at 283 pieces of legislation that we heard this year as far as testimony.
So here at Be More News, for the past 20 years, we've been covering Black business, public education, ex-offender services, universal access to healthcare, and affordable housing. Do any of those issues come across your desk?
So probably the one that most, although you serve on a various committee assignments, you determine what your priorities are going to be. And for the last couple of years, I've really been focusing on a lot of issues around small and minority and local businesses. And so oftentimes legislation that affect those industries will come to Senate Finance. This year, I had a piece of legislation to take away the exemption from MCE. For those of you who don't know, Maryland Correctional Institute, MCE, they are pretty much a quasi-state agency which employ inmates behind the bars to make various goods. But one of the unique things about MCE, they are exempt from any MBE, minority business enterprise goals. And they actually articulate that on their website, that if you do business with them, you can evade whatever goes around MBE. And so I aim to take that exemption away from them. Obviously,
that doesn't sit well with you.
No, it doesn't. I mean, here's an organization that last year in their annual report noted that they generated $55 million. And after paying all of the overhead, their net income was about $32 million. And so $32 million, $55 million, those are big numbers that can definitely help stimulate our economy as it relates to small and local and minority-owned businesses.
Not only that, Senator, a lot of these inmates are Black.
Yes, absolutely.
And the Constitution says that slavery is outlawed except for inmates.
That's my understanding as well, Donnie.
So MCE is a modern day slave owner.
The interesting thing, so back in the early, I think it was the 60s maybe, the federal government recognized that our prison industry was exploiting a lot of the inmates there. And so they made it against the law to actually to sell goods and services that was made by prisoners across state lines. And so Maryland, in response to that, legalized it in state. Right. And so the federal government said, hey, look, we're exploiting prisoners. That's not what we should be doing. We're going to make it illegal to transfer any goods that's made by prisoners across state lines. And so Maryland got really creative and they formed MCE, which essentially validated and legalized it inside the state. And then force any state agency, in order to make those purchases, they have to go to MCE first. Thereby, many of the state agencies are using MCE as their primary source to acquire goods and services.
So again, modern day slave owners.
Absolutely, pretty much, bottom line.
Now, you mentioned that you were pushing an MBE component, minority business enterprise.
And so what I asked was that MCE would not be exempt from, hey, good morning, Mr. DeShields. Good to see you. But what I asked, and my chief testifying person was Mr. Robert DeShields, who just joined us. We asked that MCE would not be exempt from these MBE goals. Obviously, that committee didn't move the bills forward, but it just doesn't make sense for MCE to be exempt and thereby eluding, those goals that could be achieved that could help benefit minority businesses.
Mr. DeShields, you've been holding out. You've been on this show a few times, several times during the Maryland General Assembly. Did we talk about these modern day slavers?
First of all, let me say good morning to you, Donnie, and to my good friend Tony Hayes. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
I could not hear. I had you all muted for the first 30 or 40 seconds, so you're going to have to fill me in on who the modern day slavers are that you're referring to at this point.
MCE.
Yeah, we were talking about Maryland Correctional Enterprise and their exempt.
Oh, yeah, that is. Even more than the fact that they obviously are not paid anywhere near the value of what their services are, even as prisoners. The most tragic thing of that whole enterprise to me is that you've got the inmates who, upon release, aren't able to find jobs using the very skills that they've acquired during the period of incarceration. I mean, you know, I visited Hagerstown many years ago when I was chairman of then Governor Glendenning's Council on Privatization, with the view towards seeing what government functions could be privatized and whatnot. And one of the places I visited was Hagerstown, and I wasn't shocked to see that the majority of the inmates were Black, but I was shocked to find how much money they had accumulated for the sale of the goods and services from the labor of these individuals. And I was even more greatly surprised that there was absolutely no intention, no effort to provide employment after release, doing the things that in the fields that they had acquired these skills in. So it was a double-edged sword. Not only were they not paid ostensibly because they were prisoners, but they were not given the opportunity. They were not provided an opportunity. No effort was made to allow them to use the skills. And I'm talking about highly skilled individuals. I'm not talking about laborers. I'm talking about these guys were operating and maintaining and repairing highly sophisticated European farming equipment, European manufacturing equipment. I mean, they weren't just stamping out license plates. I mean, they're manufacturing furniture, they're growing crops, they're processing meat, they're making a whole bunch of things that require very highly skilled individuals. And it was tragic that nobody even thought about providing an opportunity for them to be employed, utilizing those skills upon the release from prison.
And to Mr. DeShield's point, to add insult to injury, many of the inmates that work in a lot of these highly skilled areas have very lengthy prison terms. And so there's no chance that they will be exiting and reintegrating back into our communities in a really long time. And so that's one of the reasons why we thought this legislation, I want to thank Mr. DeShields again. He delivered a most convincing testimony in that bill hearing. So thank you again.
People don't know what you guys have to deal with on a regular basis down in Annapolis, but if that's where the state laws are doled out, clearly every day you go there. I mean, I know you get to wear nice suits and you get to stay in fancy hotels and eat fancy food, but you're in the middle of a war. It is a war there in Annapolis. Every day you have to fight on behalf of the constituents of the 40th district, correct?
Yes, every day we have to fight. I mean, one of the things that was most surprising to me this session, and we fought on a lot of things, you name it, police reform and other things, but one of the things that was most surprising to me, one of our colleagues had a piece of legislation to add 2 speed light cameras on I83 northbound and southbound. It's one of the deadliest roads that we have here in the city. And unlike other interstates throughout the state where Maryland Department of Transportation is responsible for the maintenance and upkeep and all that other stuff, Baltimore City taxpayers is actually responsible for I83. And last year, 1,700 calls to service for Baltimore City Police Departments went there, along with several fatalities. Now, colleagues, especially our Republican colleagues from Harford County, Baltimore County, and others, we actually had to debate them for almost 2 hours on why we needed these speed cameras, not because they cared about, residents or they wanted to help with the public safety issues in Baltimore City. They just didn't want their residents from Harford County and other places that come and work in the city every day and use our services to be subject to the fines. And so very disheartening.
Were they as concerned about Delegate Marianne Lasante, who referred to Prince George's County as the quote unquote nigger district?
I don't remember them being as adamantly opposed to that.
Okay, so in the realm of minority business enterprise, there was another issue that you guys have been working on as it relates to MBE. It kind of escapes me right now. Do you remember, Mr. Bob, any MBE bills?
I mean, there were several bills that were part of Speaker Jones, what she referred to as her black agenda. One that comes to mind particularly is the one for the workforce employee bid preference credit or something to that. And that might not be the correct title, but basically it's a provision that would allow prime contractors to obtain a bid preference credit, which is, in other words, they could get a preference at a certain percentage if their bid, if they were not the low bidder, 5%, 10%, I forget what it was, but they would get that preference based upon the fact that in their current workforce and in their workforce that to be engaged for the particular contract, that they employed a certain percentage of individuals from the community in every classification, not just laborers or low skill, but in other words, you come in and you present a layout of your composition of your workforce. And in every classification other than the president's seat, only because he can't be split, every classification, if you show that 50% or more, let's say, of your workforce came from the community for under and unemployed folks, well, for the most part, going to be Black. If you could show that, you could get a preference of up to 5 to 10% in a contract that you bid upon. Meaning that if your bid was $100 and the low bid was $95, you could still win the contract based upon the application of that worker preference credit. So that was one of the important, because look, the only real, in my opinion anyway, the real importance of business is the extent to which it provides meaningful, gainful, and significant employment for the people in the community. We're not promoting business to create more millionaires to have lunch at the Center Club or have offices on the 27th floor of high-rise buildings. The importance of a business to the community is that it provides an opportunity for the people that live there to get employment that can support their families. That's the importance. And that's what Speaker Jones' bill addressed. And so I think that's one of the more important pieces. I don't know the outcome. I don't even remember the name of the bill at this point in time, to be honest with you. I don't know the outcome of the legislation. I don't know whether it passed or whether it's intended to be enacted signed by the governor if it did, but that was a very important piece of legislation.
You know, that's a great segue, Senator. How is this governor responding to us? We get one more term.
Yeah, this year there was a lot of cooperation from the governor, to his credit, more than what I've seen in past years. I'll tell you, the way we started the beginning of the session was really focused on how we deal with the pandemic and how COVID has affected so many families. And so piece of legislation that I've never seen move throughout the legislature so fast was the Recovery Act that was passed actually in the second week of session. Now, the first week we start on a Wednesday, so it's only a half a week, but we had the bill on third reader by the second week of session, provided $1.5 billion to individuals that were suffering hardship, whether that was individuals that were suffering evictions or those people who were looking at unemployment. I tell you, like every day, even now, session is over, and supposedly we should have a handle on unemployment insurance. But I often get calls from people in the community who can't even get their phone call answered by someone from the Department of Labor. And so what we said is, if for whatever reason you've been waiting 30 days, you've applied, and you've just been waiting on a response from the Department of Labor, that we would cut a check for $1,000 just for those families who was waiting. But there's so many things that we packed into there: food distribution, provided additional resources for vaccines and jobs and other things. But $1.5 billion in the very second week of session. Also, to Mr. DeShields' point, it was not an MBE bill, but a bill that I had the opportunity to defend on the floor. It was not a bill that I sponsored, but again, it was one that Speaker Jones sponsored, was mandating that various boards and commissions had some level of diversity, especially those who did business with the state. That was met with a lot of opposition. which makes a lot of sense. You know, Maryland as a large majority communities throughout the state of Maryland. And so the resistance to have diverse boards of directors that control a lot of these corporations was unbelievable.
I'm not understanding. Who was giving the kickback? Who was pushing back?
So a lot of colleagues who, you know, and I would say most of the point, there was a lot of Republican opposition, but even in some cases, you saw conservative Democrats pushing back on the thought that we would mandate that all of the boards of directors of the corporations that do business with the state or otherwise that exist here in Maryland have diversity on their boards.
So you're telling me that
we were successful to get it passed.
That our fellow Democrats, we have fellow Democrats, and I'm presuming these might be white liberals who don't believe
mostly those conservative Democrats from like places like Harford County, Eastern Shore, and Western Maryland. But for the most part, unanimously, our Republican colleagues were in staunch opposition to it.
Well, how do you think that's going to play out as we're looking at a governor's race next year?
I think, you know, elections about consequences, right? And people will look at all of the folks that are putting their hat in the ring and make the decisions that best serve their interests. And I think, you know, this year we had a large amount of bipartisanship, but we will see as we go into these next elections, you know, where people's principal priorities lay, and they'll make those decisions about who they elect as governor.
What names are you hearing on the Democratic side?
It's a whole plethora of people. I hesitate to say because there's so many names out there, but
I'll help you out. You got Peter France.
Right. That's one of the people who pose his name out there. I've heard Francho, Anthony Brown. I've heard the county executive Angela also Brooks of Prince George's County, Westmore, Johnny O of Baltimore County, John King in Montgomery County, Tom Perez from Montgomery County. So the list of candidates for governor is pretty extensive. And
Rashawn Baker.
Rashawn Baker, yes. The names go on. That's why I said I know I was going to forget somebody.
Well, he's a spoiler. I'll back up. Come on, Mr. Bob.
No, I don't want to talk about who's going to run for governor. I want to talk about some of the other bill about appointments to boards and commissions. But I'm not talking about private companies appoint boards of directors. I'm talking about state. There's never been a black member of the Maryland Board of Contract Appeals. This is an agency that decides every bid dispute and every claim that comes from every agency that's subject to the procurement laws of the state of Maryland. We don't have anybody black on the Maryland Environmental Services. That's the agency that's exempt essentially from the Maryland Procurement Code. We've got to, Donnie, we've got to do a much better job. And even in those agencies that have black members.
Environmental Services, isn't the current executive director black now?
There
is at least one member on there, but that's new. It has never.
Yes. You're right. That was a shakeup a few. Yes, but for the most part, Donnie, we've got to do a better job. And this is not for a Republican administration or a Democrat. We've got to do a better job within our community. We don't participate in the process effectively of selecting those individuals to be on these government agencies and boards. And so typically we allow them to be filled by political patronage. Well, we can't afford that. We can't afford the people to be appointed just as a political payoff. We've got to get competent people who know what the heck they're doing and are committed to advancing the interests of our community. And we haven't done that historically. To be honest, at least not in my opinion.
No, I mean, Bob, you're absolutely right and dead on. Like I said, this year is the first year I got a chance to serve on executive nominations, and I take that appointment very seriously. I actually replaced the late President Mike Miller as a member of that executive nominations committee. And out of this session, there was only one appointment that was defeated. There was a young man from Western Maryland who there was about a 5 to 6 appointments to the University of Maryland system, which, oversee 13 of our institutions of higher education, including 3 of our HBCUs. And I asked each of them one question: how can we, as a University of Maryland system, make our HBCUs more competitive? And the gentleman answered, the first thing we need to consider is put Morgan back under the control of the University of Maryland system, which didn't make any sense because Morgan has done really well in being an independent entity. And so I objected to his nomination, and that was the only appointment, and this is my first year serving on there. That was the only appointment that was denied. But to your point, we definitely need to do a better job at identifying individuals in our community that have an interest and expertise to serve on these various.
Senator, may I say something in that department of HBCUs? What can be done to make them more competitive?
Sure. I have a couple of ideas, but would love to hear what you have.
If you notice, out of the clear blue sky, you'll see some white university, Sale University, Joe Blow University, with an online component.
Mm-hmm.
I've attended historically Black colleges and universities. It has always baffled me why, since we only have a limited number of them, why don't they work together to develop a world-class online education system? Online.
Well, part of the
future. Let me just say this.
Part of the
you can get a degree or certificate from Harvard. And some people are not going to like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it. When I look at the money that goes to Morgan State University and Kappa and Bowie and University of Maryland Eastern Shore, but I'm thinking about Morgan because we always hear we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money. If you ask me, and you did, Morgan and Kappa are missing a gold mine in opportunities. We don't see Morgan and Kappa advertising in our communities. For instance, right now, you have a captive audience. You have people at home. I have yet to hear Morgan say, hey, to any former Morgan students, if you're interested in finishing your degree, we have a special program just for you. Our HBCUs are always crying and begging. But we as that return to the community, to the citizens, to the everyday people who would benefit most from their resources. I don't see that connection. It's almost a class thing. I've got mine, you got yours to get, and you're like, well, hold up. I thought an HBCU had a specific mission of helping to empower the Black community, but we don't see them.
Right.
I wish I didn't have to leave right now. I really want to get into this. I got a conference call I got to take. But when you bring the senator back, please invite me again, and I'll come back because this is a topic that's very important. I do apologize. I have to go. See you, Tony. See you, Don.
Yeah. Appreciate your presence always. But Donnie, it's been a little while since both you and I have graduated from college, and some of our HBCUs are increasing their online presence, and the pandemic has taught us nothing else, that online presence is so important. And so as a part of the HBCU settlement, actually articulated in that legislation and encouraging funding to support those HBCUs to extend their online presence. Look, let's face it, University of Maryland University College, which is an all online platform, has a huge amount of students, growing amount of students because of them offering online classes. I think higher education is starting to recognize this. I know Morgan and Coppin, as well as UMES and Bowie, has an interest in extending that. And I would imagine in the very near future, you will see a greater presence of online at all of our institutions. And so it has not been that case. You're absolutely right. But I believe that you're going to see more and more, especially as this pandemic has taught us that people can be educated online. And I've helped support it, some of that work through legislation that I've actually sponsored this year to help elevate the presence of Coppin State University, which is, in my opinion, a totally undervalued organization.
I'll just be honest with you. I've been trying to get an interview with the new president for months. The last president, it was the same thing. Quite frankly, I'm not impressed. We are in a 911 in the Black community in Baltimore. And when you have heads of major institutions who are seemingly disconnected from the grassroots people, but yet we are to celebrate these HBCUs when they get a lot of money, I don't follow that. I don't get it. I don't understand what message. I came to you about Maria Thompson. I never got a chance to interview that lady. And then,
so
going out the door,
I promise you, Dr. Jenkins at Coppin State University is very receptive. Next month he'll settle.
We've been inviting him on the show for several months, and I hate to put it out there.
Let me help you facilitate that.
Hey man, I've heard that before, and that's fine, and we're open to it. But if their level of response to me, a journalist, is like that, I can only imagine what the everyday person goes through. And that's really the reason that I magnified this conversation. What about the everyday person? See, Coppin is right there in the middle of a neighborhood I grew up in, North and Warwick. You know, that neighborhood used to create some of the biggest kingpins in the city of Baltimore. And if you're going to replace that with the expansion of Coppin, of something of which I was a part of, going back to the days of Early. Remember when your girl KKT lost? Early put money down there that has never gone there before. But now that we have it, Coppin didn't even get the police academy up there.
No, I hear you.
Some brain surgeon decided to put the police academy downtown when Calvin was more than capable. And then you had a police commissioner who nobody schooled who agreed with it to move it to the University of Baltimore. And it's like, we're out here fighting for our HBCUs, or our HBCUs fighting for us.
Donnie, but to your point, that was not a decision that Coppin made, right? Coppin really would like to have the police academy there. But the whole basis of our HBCU lawsuit was the fact that the University of Maryland system and others allowed the programs that were offered at HBCUs to be duplicated.
I get it.
At a total disadvantage. And so I hear you, and I don't know what difficulties you've had at reaching out to some of the HBCUs, but I'll tell you, in my experience, the president in Kappa, next month, this month, we're in May now, he celebrates just 12 months since he's been there, and already he's hit the ground running. This year, I introduced a piece of legislation called the West North Avenue Development Authority. The Coppin State president reached out to me and asked to chair this because he realized that they can't just do work there on a campus, that their work is all along West North Avenue and some of the surrounding communities. And so I think you're going to see a large role of what happening on campus.
Senator,
no, I'm not making excuses, but you have to understand, like,
they gotta understand.
If you look at the amount of money that College Park get in comparison to Coppin,
I get it.
None of their students are
Pell Grant.
If you look at the research dollars that College Park get in relation, they are far exceeding our historically Black colleges.
I get it, but when
they put us at a disadvantage.
Hold up. When I was going to Coppin, there wasn't a whole lot of bells and whistles and money and all of that. I get it. I understand the mission of an HBCU, from Morehouse to Morgan to even to Coppin. I understand the mission. I understand we're always lacking to some extent.
Yes, especially to our white counterparts.
I understand, but we've always done more with less. And I'm saying that our institutions, when that man—
That doesn't make it right, Donnie. That doesn't make it right.
Senator, when that man applied for that job at North Avenue, on North Avenue, he saw what he was surrounded by. Now, it shouldn't take a year to connect with the community. Just my thoughts.
No, and I don't. I hear you, and I don't think it's taking a year. Look, I will get in contact with Kappa and make sure that they come on. But I know for a fact, and so I don't want to sit here knowing the outreach that he's done to the communities around him and not bring that bring that up as an issue, because I know for a fact that he has reached out to all of the neighboring communities around there, whether it be Miss Adeline Hutchison up there at Greater Mondawmin or the Panway community and others. And he has an interest in making sure that the university leave the footprint of their campus into the community. And so we want to work on that. And because he shares that vision, because he's expressed that to me, I want to work with him wholeheartedly in seeing that vision come true.
I've worked with a number of college presidents. My favorite was, is, and always will be Dr. Calvin Burnett. He was a man. Did you know Dr. Burnett used to walk from Kappa to downtown Baltimore and back every day?
No, I didn't know that.
Very connected to the community. See, some people can talk it, but some people live it. So we've seen Maria Thompson. She was there 2-3 years.
Right.
We never saw her. And I want to say this to you. I was there when they were trying to merge Coppin, UB, and BCCC.
Right. And those efforts still haven't stopped, Donnie. But so my hesitancy.
They were trying to do that when Coppin didn't have a president. That was the worst time ever.
No,
just
I agree.
Each young man came on board. That was the worst time ever. And only Doc Cheatham and myself spoke out against it. And I don't agree with Doc Cheatham on much of anything.
Well, I agree with Doc a lot on some things, and sometimes we disagree on. But I'm not sure if you guys were the only two. There was obviously others.
When they had the hearing up at BCCC,
oh right,
we were the only few that spoke up. I know because Mr. Smoke gave me the dirtiest look he ever gave me. Really.
But I'll tell you, I think good things are coming from Coppin.
Senator, you still with us?
They, 70% of their young people still with you. I can hear you. The picture went out a little bit, but I could still hear you and everything. Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, but at Coppin State University, which I'll talk about till the cows come home, because I represent Coppin State University.
I'm an alumni. I came out of the
and I'm proud of the work that they're doing.
Scholar, brother.
I understand, but they're educating people in communities where I grew up at, in Penn North, and
I grew up down the street from
other places. And so the challenges that they have before them are great. And we have enough people, especially, some of my colleagues that don't represent Baltimore City, that are looking for additional ways to take money away from Coppin. I'm not going to be among the crowd.
I'm saying to whom much is given, much is required. And I'm saying in academia, particularly in the Black community, there's a certain classism. We can't complain about how white people treat us when we don't treat each other the same way, when we don't treat each other right. Don't cry to me about the white boy when you're not taking care of your brother. What God say? How can you love God in heaven who you have not seen, and you don't love your brother who's right there in your face? Okay, so let's go down the block a bit to Penn North.
Yes.
2015, April, Freddie Gray kicked off. International media came to that intersection. You grew up, with Salem Street, Francis Street, just around the corner, not far from KC, and businesses. Everyone's place was birthed just around this corner from you.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with Penn North?
Good things are happening. Penn North has seen a lot of disinvestment for many, many, many years, since I grew up there on Edding Street and Francis Avenue or whatever. One of the things that I'm excited about is in a very near future, and this is after years and years of advocacy, we lost our elementary school. The elementary school that I went to, Westside Elementary, on the corner of Francis and Fulton Avenue, a number of years ago when I first came into the House of Delegates. So that was at least like 6 years ago that school was slated to close down, and they opened up John Eager Howard. Well, this fall, we're going to embark upon the demolition of that elementary school as well as the recreation center and build a brand new state-of-the-art recreation center and park for the community to take advantage of. Some of the projects that Rec and Parks have been doing have been extraordinary, and I'm looking forward to partnering with the city to make sure that community. What's that?
Where are these extraordinary projects?
In that same location. So where Parkview and so Cahill Rec Center. You talk about the other ones. Have you? I don't know if you've had a chance to see Cahill, but I've never.
It is up in the woods, up in Walbrook Junction.
Right, but your question was, where have some of these projects taken place?
So they up in Cahill
Center. If anyone haven't been up there since they reopened, it is amazing with their swimming pool, rock climbing wall, fitness center, a full theater. Like, it is an awesome project. Coming online very, very soon is the new Cherry Hill Recreation Center, which I'm told costs more and is going to be more expansive. And so some of the work that Recs and Parks have been doing in the most recent years, these Rec Center, Cahill looks nothing like the Rec Center that you and I went to, Donnie. Like, it is.
Senator, this is long overdue. Prince George's County, Washington, D.C. have had state-of-the-art recreation centers for years. Every night the news comes on, they talk about the murders, the crime in these very same neglected communities. What about Easterwood? That's right in the heart of West Baltimore. With all due respect, Cahill is up in the junction, up on the hill, right?
Right.
And Cherry Hill is one way in, one way out. What I'm getting to, what about recreation centers like Chickwell, like Easterwood? These are in the heart of East and West Baltimore, where the murders are, what Fox News reports on every night. When are we going to replace, and put resources, Easterwood or Lillian Jones around the corner from me?
Right. And so,
because in Sandtown, we now have one elementary school.
Gotcha. Right.
You close the school, you kill a community.
This is the first time, Donnie, that I've seen a lot of progress being made in a lot of these centers. Yeah, it's been a long time, but now, I like to highlight the things that's happening now with Cahill, with Cherry Hill, and actually Easterwood. It's a difference in that recreation center versus the two that I just named, in that it's owned by Recs and Parks, but it's not managed by Recs and Parks. And so there was a partnership with the community in order to do it. So when you take on a lease of a property and say that I will be responsible.
Okay, take the lease back. We don't care who owns it. We want resources for our people. No disrespect to the Omegas. I mean, Stephanie Rollins Blake was the one that put them in that predicament. Remember, they put $10 million downtown for the Grand Prix and took money from the Recs. We don't care who runs it. We just want the resources in these very same neighborhoods that Fox News reports about every night.
Well, Fox News also have an agenda to make their neighborhoods look bad. They have a national agenda to the school system. And so like using them as a source, I'm not sure if it's valid to describe.
They're the ones that brought up that 0.13 GPA that nobody talked about. Nobody really wanted to comment about students about Augusta Savage getting money for students who weren't there. Nobody else is reporting that.
But they're also not reporting the young Black kids that are in our neighborhoods that are excelling at higher rates than any other communities around. When you have an organization that's focused on destroying our communities and discrediting neighborhoods that I grew up in, that I have pride in, I take issue with that, Donnie. And so, we could focus on the negative things. We could focus on the homicides and shootings, but there's some bright young people who grew up in poverty, who have grandmothers that's raising them because of whatever parents that aren't in their lives, who are exceeding all odds. And so when Fox News start reporting on stuff like that, and then I would like to say that they're having a balanced reporting. But when your only thing that you want to do is point out the abnormalities that happen out of thousands or hundreds of thousands of students that attend our schools, I take issue with that. And I'd much prefer to have a balanced report to showing the Black excellence that's happening right here in Baltimore City. And our young people are doing it. Every year we give away a scholarship to individuals in Baltimore City. And the GPAs and the levels of engagement that our young people are involved in that seek these scholarships are astonishing to me. I've not seen those reports on Fox News. I don't hear those conversations on the streets or in our barbershop.
We gladly report
are define all odds.
We gladly report about it.
Bring them on the show. I'll be more than glad to bring them on here.
But at the same time,
there's some good stuff happening in Baltimore, Donnie.
Let me just say, Senator, we live in a 9-to-1 Democratic town. And what I have found is that there are no checks and balances. Once you're in the Democratic club, once you're in the Democratic elite, once you're among the Democratic elected officials, everybody watches everybody's back. There's very little accountability. That's how Captain Pugh could come up with $800,000 in Healthy Holly books, because ain't nobody say nothing because everybody was getting paid off.
Actually, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. It was a Democratic elected official that elevated that issue that later led into the investigation. And yeah, Baltimore is a Democratic city, and like Democrats, like our families, Donnie, we have people who are rising stars, and we have weights that pull our families down. And I would hope that the communities that I represent see me as one that first listens, because I think in order to be an effective elected official, you need to listen to the people that's on the ground, that's doing the work, that's out there in communities, that's trying to better their communities and finding ways on how to elevate them. But I would wholeheartedly agree with you. There's Democrats and there's Republicans. This year, when it came to police reform and police accountability, every single step along the way, our Republican colleagues fought us. And so do we say the hell with the Democratic Party because they're in control of it, or we hold them accountable and get the right people in there to make sure that they're serving in the best interests of their communities? I, for one, have been trying to focus on supporting those individuals who have the best interests of our communities and getting rid of those people that are continuously holding us back. And a lot of progress. I wanted to talk about the West North Avenue Development Authority that we're doing with, Kappa and Micah serving as the anchor institutions, bringing more development, more business opportunities along that corridor. The West North Avenue corridor is the second highest bus travel route in the state of Maryland. Again, they suffer from a lot of, violence. And so I think bringing resources to that community. You mentioned Pennsylvania and North Avenue, and you mentioned, the benchmark of 2015. But I will argue Pennsylvania and North Avenue hasn't been to its full glory since 1968, before I was even born, right? And so we have a lot of work to do, and it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm definitely going to fight every day to try to accelerate it and make sure that it lives to the glory that my aunts and my grandmother and all of them talked about, where you could go to a shoe shine store, a shoe shop, you could buy a nice hat and a bag, you could go to, an attorney and stuff like that. And so hopefully our better days are ahead of us. There's a lot of people out there, and especially people outside of Baltimore City, that would love to say how bad things are in Baltimore and how unsafe Baltimore is. But you know who's making money off of keep saying how unsafe Baltimore is? All these investors that are coming in, buying up property for $10,000 or $14,000 for a house that should be worth $200,000. And so the more we condemn Baltimore, the more we pull it down. There's other people that don't look like us, that don't have the communities and our grandmothers whose labor.
Are you talking about me condemning Baltimore?
Who are coming in and
are you talking about me?
No, I'm just saying the folks that
I don't need Fox.
You mentioned Fox 45, and you got under my collar with Fox 45, Donnie.
I don't need anybody to tell me what's going on here. I live here. I know what's going on here.
Right. Yeah.
And we've had benign neglect. I've seen North and Charles get developed overnight. You said it doesn't happen overnight. North and Charles got developed in 5 years.
I hear you, but that's not quite overnight. We mentioned words there. I could see the same type of renaissance coming to North Avenue in 5 years. Now that we've put the pieces together, and part of
Leon Pinkett. Remember Leon Pinkett? He had a
yes,
press conference when he ran for office. I'm thinking it was like 5 years ago. It was the coldest day of the year. He had a press conference at Penn North. And we thought it was going to be some new stuff coming to Penn North. And what it really was his announcement that he was running for Baltimore City Council. You remember?
I wasn't at that event. You may have been there. I missed that one. But I think there's some good stuff coming.
North Avenue Rising. It was a young man. He lived on Utah Street, just down the street from Pinkett.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know Leon Pinkett.
The guy's name was May, I think. And they were talking about this.
Richard May. Oh, you're talking about that. You talking about that idea? What are they? It wasn't North Avenue Rising. It was
Innovation Technology.
Yeah, Innovation Village. Yeah,
Innovation Village. So we've seen the 50 fake out before, and Pinkett wrote it. We thought Pinkett was with it, but we knew May hadn't talked to the people along North Avenue.
Right. And so, how do we move forward from there? We move forward with the West North Avenue Development Authority.
Pinkett wasted 5 years of our time.
That's possible. You know, one of the things that I've learned, and you know how I've worked with Rashid Aziz and Citywide Youth Development. You know, and now Rashid has an awesome place right there on North Avenue. But Donnie, I've been working with Rashid since 2014. A lot of this progress, it doesn't happen when we like it to happen, right?
Hey, bro, I'm almost dead. I'm 55. I ain't got time to wait. We want to see it now.
Well, I hear you, but you know, sometimes it's a little slow.
We need it now. We need it now.
I hear you.
After Freddie Gray being the international center of media attention, common sense says to me, my God, let's get down there and at least fix the vacant buildings. Why is it so hard to take a vacant building from a slumlord?
And the only thing I would say, Donnie, is why didn't we fix those same vacant buildings before 2015? Right?
Okay, I don't know, but can we fix them now?
Yeah, right. A lot of those vacant buildings existed way before 2015, and that's what I'm saying to you since 1998.
Why haven't we taken it?
Exactly, I agree. And so
why haven't we? I'm asking you.
Now we have a mechanism because of priorities, right? And when people don't prioritize places like Pennsylvania and North Avenue, things.
So what makes me loyal to people that don't make me a priority?
You should not. I'm not encouraging you to do, and neither will I be. Prioritize people that don't look at us as a
the next governor running. I don't care who they are, black, white, male, female, Democrat, Republican. If you're not talking about my community, they get nothing.
Same. If people aren't committed to West Baltimore, to West North Avenue, to Sandtown, to Penn North, to Park Heights.
Last time they gave us Ben Jealous.
Committed to Kappa State University, they would not have my support either.
Have you seen Ben Jealous?
I've heard from him from time to time. Yes, I haven't out in the community as much. But to that point, I haven't seen many people out in 2020.
No. We have to do better. See, black people, we may not be the most sophisticated when it comes to the various committees, Senate Finance, JPR. We may not know those things, but you know one thing we know?
What you
we
know?
Tell me, bro. We know real from fake, real from phony. That we know all day long.
Yes, we do. I agree, man. That I definitely agree with. Like people can see through the crap.
Minutia, yeah.
Yes.
So who we gonna support for governor? Because I gotta start telling people. They already calling me.
Well, you don't have that many people declared. Everyone's talking about, who shot Johnny and John, but there's not many of them that have actually stepped up and signed the right paperwork and said, hey, I am running for governor. So I think we're still a little early in the game to find out who's in a race. But I'm hearing, several names, and we'll see what it looks like pretty soon.
Well, you only got a year.
Yeah, about a year.
Mary Miller came on the scene with a ton of money. She did a commercial in front of Western District Police Station. Did you advise that white lady to do a commercial in front of Western District Police Station?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know that was, I did not advise her of doing
because
that.
She didn't know that Western District is the only redevelopment we've seen in Sandtown since Freddie Gray. So anybody with any modicum of common sense would say that's not a good move. If you're
that's not a good move. No, I agree with you.
See, all the money in the world don't mean nothing if you ain't got this.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree. But I will tell you, there are some communities and some community leaders that are steadfast at bringing about positive change in their neighborhood. And, and I could name them, for days, whether it's, Art Social Club and Art Social
Marvin Hayes got
Community Association.
Marvin Hayes, I brought him to you, and he's not going to
I got it.
He said he's been trying to clean up the alleys around there, and he is not getting cooperation from entities that get a lot of attention. Marvin Hayes, his life is on the line. I
understand, but the organizations that are around there, the organizations are not putting trash on the corner of Stockton and Cumberland Street. Those are people that and most of it is not even live in that neighborhood. A lot, if you go down there right now, I was just down there Saturday and had DPW come around and move the trash, right? I bet you if I go back down there today, people are dumping there again. And it's not people that live on that block that's necessarily dumping.
At the same time, that block is turned into a haven for drugs.
But we're going to work on it. West North Avenue Development Authority.
Does that mean displacing Black people?
Nope.
How do we get rid of these vacants? No, seriously, how do we get rid of the vacants?
So one of the things that I introduced this session was the part of the problem how you in dealing with vacancies in our community is the appraisal value in which the banks will loan you to fix up the houses often is much lower than what you could actually sell the price of the home for, or it's actually much lower than what the construction costs are, right?
So knock them all down. Just get it over with. But we can't keep seeing these. Look, let me tell you why.
I don't know if you're in the Midwest and seeing what the Midwest look like as opposed to Baltimore, but we have some pretty rich, diverse architecture here in the city, and
Senator,
it all torn down.
Senator, I live in the community. These vacants are shooting galleries. People are shooting dope. That's what the shooting gallery is, shooting dope into their arms. That's what we see. The vacants are a nuisance. We're chasing they get high, they burn the house down. We're sick of them. And we don't care. Tear them down, get rid of them.
Some of them you could tear down. A lot of them have been torn down over the last couple of years. But some of them are very useful to having residents. One of the things that's important about these census numbers that we're going to see coming up, Donnie, is we lose money per every resident. And if we tear down every single house and not leave opportunities for people to move back in, then we'll have a problem. One of the things I do like about the partnership between the city and the state, they really identify strategic places where they could tear down properties and bring development back. And then some places, they've actually looked at opportunities to turn them into green space. And like even right there behind Rashid's place up there on North Avenue, Parks and People came in and put a park back there. And there's not a day that I go by that you don't see young people or residents in that community playing out in the park. You see kids out there doing picnics and, throwing horseshoes and stuff like that. And so I think, really a lot of these ideas should be driven by the residents and stakeholders that live in those communities and figuring out ways that we can help support their vision and make their community the community they want to be. But I think just wholesale, because it's a vacant house and turn it down, is not the solution either. We got to be smart about it. We got to have a plan for them. And in some places, the whole block need to be torn down without a doubt. But that should be a decision that's really driven by the communities and the people that live there to recognize what should be torn down and what should be stabilized.
I mean, that's 1600 block of West North Avenue. What's going on there?
1600 block of North.
That's Penn North. I used to live 1627.
Right. What are the cross streets? So
going north, that's the block to the left. The block to the left going north.
Right. So there's actually a development that's going to break ground there this August. So everything from that church right there at the corner of Retreat and North Avenue all the way down to the Tickler building, that entire piece is about to be developed there. We also have some demolition money for the other side of the street to deal with some of the properties that Marvin Hayes has identified on Stockton Street. So there's a lot of good stuff that's coming to North Avenue. And that's why I'm going to keep taking you back to this West North Avenue Development Authority. You should come out and join me. I give tours of West North Avenue at least every weekend. If you would just join me for 2 hours, you'll see the potential of what's going to come there. We have an opportunity to attract Black businesses. We have an opportunity to bring more residents back. Now, there are going to be some houses and some facilities that we need to tear down, but North Avenue is a diamond in the rough. And if we see the potential and put the right investment in it, we could turn it around and make it a very desirable place for people that don't even look at Baltimore as an option to come and live and do business.
You know, the one thing I've seen change since Freddie Gray.
What's that?
I got white addicts in my alley shooting dope. Any final thoughts, Senator?
No, I would just tell yourself and your listeners to keep up to date on what we have going on in the 40th District. Please visit our website at AntonioHayes.com. In a couple of days on May the 7th is the deadline for our scholarship. We give away probably $250,000 in scholarships every year to individuals that's trying to go to schools for higher education. Our deadline in the Senate is May the 7th. You have a little bit more time, I think, till the end of the month to contact your members of the House of Delegates. But definitely visit our website. You'll see some of the stuff that we were able to get accomplished this session. The good thing about following legislation is a lot of times we pass the legislation, but there's some time for it to actually come, go into an effect. And so now is the time to look through those things to see where the opportunities may exist later on that one should take advantage of in our same community. So I would encourage those to definitely visit AntonioHayes.com. We'll continue to update information around COVID-19 and whatever recovery efforts and various grants and stuff we have. Like I said, we approved $1.5 billion with a B this legislative session. And if you're not looking through some of those various programs, whether it be the Main Streets program, whether it be the grants for small businesses, which used to only be loans, we made sure that the Department of Commerce converted them into grants so we wouldn't add more debt on a lot of small and minority businesses. If you're having somebody that's facing evictions, that you get information around the assistance for evictions and those landlords who need some type of assistance as well, because not all landlords are bad people. We have some landlords in the city where they own 1 or 2 houses and it's just their investment property. And so there's a lot of good stuff that we got done this session. We want to make sure that we continue to get the word out there and people take advantage of it. So please visit our website at AntonioHayes.com.
I need 2 things from you.
Yes, sir.
We want to name a street in Baltimore Black Wall Street. And we also want a Harriet Tubman statue on North Avenue. They got one in Harlem, even though she lived there. We need a Harriet Tubman statue. Just like they got the Jewish Memorial downtown, Holocaust Memorial. It's a Black city. And they're taking our names off of buildings. George Kelson, William Penderhughes, across the city. We must memorialize our history because nobody else will. Senator, we thank you for taking time out, and we encourage you to keep doing the fight. My name's Donnie Glover, and we'll be back at 7 p.m. tonight.
Thank you.